I'm Tim Larkin, your self-protection specialist. Thanks for giving me a few minutes of your time to go over your self-protection needs. You know, a lot of the questions I get are about how do trained fighters, MMA practitioners, combat athletes, how do they perform outside of the ring when they have to use self-protection, when they have to protect themselves from violence? And so today I've selected a clip that happened in Brazil at a convenience store. We've got two highly trained combat athletes. One who's at the start of his career, he's at 7-0, and then we have a veteran who at this stage of the game is 30-4. Highly competent guy. He had 22 knockouts in the first round. So what I want to do before I go to the incident is let's take a look at the highlight of how they perform within the ring. Now this is Kaue Mena. He's the kid that is 7-0 at this stage of the game. You're going to see quick hands, quick, ability, puts the guys down right away. Fights are over very quickly with him. Extremely comfortable in the ring. Promising career. Now this is the veteran, and you can see this is a Bellator fight. He's also been a UFC fighter. Very comfortable within the octagon, very comfortable within the cage. You can see just putting guys down. But look at the focus. There's a ref in here, but the whole focus is on the individual that he has to fight right now. His whole focus is just there. And look, he's very comfortable. So we're going to stop it here. Now, what you saw were two athletes that are used to a couple of things. They're used to knowing who they're going to fight. Okay, so prior to going into a fight, they're going to know the guy's skill sets, the weight class is going to be there, and they're going to have time to train. Usually at least 6 to 8 weeks prior to any event, they've been training. They also know the defined area they're going to be fighting in. Is it going to be an octagon? Is it going to be a cage? Depending on the event, they're going to know exactly what that is. They're also going to be handed a list of rules that they're going to have to perform under. That's great. And they know there's a ref there to enforce all of that. So the only thing they need to focus on is the immediate threat in front of them. And they're very good at that, as you can see from their records. Now, we're going to go into an environment where none of that applies. And they're going to use those same skills in a real-world event. And it's going to be interesting for you to see how that works. So let's take a look. Okay, so here's Falcao going in, saying some inappropriate things to these two girls. He even flicks at one girl's hair. Again, a lot of totally avoidable antisocial aggression. We'll talk about that later. Now, I want to stop it right here. This is where you see the two fighters. First one is Kaue Mena, second one's going to be Falcao. But what's more interesting to me at this point is look at the posturing that's going on right now. This is that antisocial aggression. Both of these guys, both of these fighters are extremely comfortable here. Why? Because they're used to guys getting up in their face, doing that whole thing, the pre-fight hype. They're going to perform pretty well at this point because it's just going to be basically 2-on-2. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so it's starting off. Now, this is where their skill sets, look, they feel pretty comfortable, they're flailing around, but nobody's really getting injured, which is kind of interesting. But it's something that they're used to. Now, this, I'm going to hold it here, is where everything changes. They go outside. You'll notice we've highlighted a 2x4 that's being used. And you're going to see that Falcao has no idea how to deal with this. He's doing exactly the wrong thing he should be doing. And he has a choice. He can do one of two things. He can either charge forward or he can go back. One gives him the ability to actually survive the situation and probably get to the guy. The other one makes him a much easier target. Unfortunately, he chooses to be a much easier target. Let's look at the result. He gets hit. Now he's out of the page. Now you'll notice, stopping it right here, Kaue Mena is completely focused, just like he was on the ring, with the one guy that he's fighting. He's oblivious to everything else that's around him, and that's when the same guy with the 2x4 comes running up behind him and brains him in the back of the head. This is the strike that's put him into a coma, along with the multiple strikes that you can see after this. But the key was, in the ring, he doesn't have to worry about that. He has a ref watching his back. He's used to seeing a ref in there, but he's not used to seeing another threat. And so he's not defining, he's not fighting for that. He's not moving around. He's not seeing the threat. And that's why it was so easy for this unskilled guy with a 2x4 to run right up behind him and brain him in the back of the head. So, take a look from here. It only gets worse. You'll see he goes down, and this is where they really start to put it into him. He hits hard on the concrete, and look, they just jump on top of him. Unskilled fighters. Unskilled, regular guys just taking shots at him, kicking him, going after. Another guy's gonna come in here right now. Look, one more, boom. This kid's still in a coma at this stage of the game. Falcao, look, he watched as the thing hits him in the head. Now, am I saying that combat athletes are somehow less than, that they're not able to handle real violence? No, what I'm trying to show you is these skill sets that these guys train for are for a very specific arena that they're dealing with very specific parameters. Outside in the real world, if you use those parameters, oftentimes you're gonna find unskilled people who just have the ability to want to hurt you are gonna be able to do it because you're not able to play that game. You're not able to move around. You're not able to see because you haven't trained for that. These guys with that training probably would have performed much differently. They're incredibly capable, as we saw. They're amazing athletes. It was just knowledge that they didn't have on how to deal with, outliers, more than one person. What happens when a weapon comes into it? How do I deal with these threats? These are not things that are normally covered in your typical combat athlete's regime, and most of them will admit that. It's very simple to fix this, though. You don't have to be a highly trained combat athlete to be able to handle these situations. How do we know that? These unskilled guys with just the intent and the ability to come in and do injury were able to take out two highly skilled combat athlete practitioners. Again, it's just knowledge that you don't have. Now I'm going to wrap this back to the original problem. The original problem was this was completely avoidable. These two fighters, very cocky, very used to themselves. You can see how they carry themselves. They're very comfortable because of their success in the ring. They take that outside into an area like this environment. They offend two girls and they bring upon themselves something they had no idea was going to end up the way it was. Again, confident in a skill set that doesn't apply in the real world. So, the combat athletes that come and train with me are always aware of the fact that you have to be aware of your surroundings, you have to understand how weapons work, you have to understand how to move when there's multiple adversaries. That's key. But more importantly for us, this was completely avoidable. It was the behavior of Falcao towards the two women by flicking the hair and just being a jerk that predicated this whole event. Everything came in. They had a couple of chances to de-escalate. Even when the guys came in, they probably could have placated the situation. They chose not to. They had this false sense of security of their abilities within the ring, and they thought it would translate to, that event. And as you saw, highly unskilled guys with determination to injure, not compete, resulted in the situation that we saw. One guy in a coma, one guy severely injured. I hope you can take away, some really good information from this, because you have to remember that the goal is to live a life that avoids violence, not to, encourage it. This situation encouraged violence, and we saw the result. I'm Tim Larkin, your self-protection specialist. And remember, violence is rarely the answer, but when it is, it's the only answer.